So if you're thinking about buying a sawmill, that is something I wish somebody had told me before I started. The biggest mistakes you're going to make probably aren't going to be while the actual log is on the mill or while you're sawing the log. They're going to happen before the log ever gets to the mill. They're going to happen when you buy equipment, when you decide which logs to cut, or when you figure out what to do with the lumber, and especially when you start putting a price on your time. I've made plenty of mistakes over the past 3 years. I've had this mill for almost 4 years, and like I said, I have made plenty of mistakes. So if I had to start over again, there are six things that I would do different. And if you're thinking about getting into sawmilling, hopefully this video will save you a little bit of money and maybe a few headaches. Mistake number one is buying too much equipment too soon. This is probably one of the easiest mistakes to make. You start looking for a sawmill, and then before long you're thinking, well, if I'm going to do this, I might as well get a bigger one. Okay, I understand the temptation. I was in the same boat. You know, a bigger sawmill means more horsepower, more capacity, longer logs, wider cuts. It all sounds great, but there is one problem. A bigger sawmill does not automatically make you more money. I hope you know that. Just because you have a bigger sawmill, it does not automatically make you more money. If you're only milling a few days a month, like me, or you don't have enough customers to keep you busy, to keep your mill running, you just spend a lot of money increasing in capacity that you don't need. And sometimes the sawmill isn't even the bottleneck. Maybe you're having trouble moving logs. Maybe you don't have a good way to handle the finished lumber. Or maybe you don't have enough covered storage. Maybe you don't have a way to dry the lumber. Or maybe you're spending all your time looking for customers. In those situations, buying a bigger mill isn't necessarily going to solve your problem. Sometimes the better investment is a tractor or a grapple for your tractor, a trailer to deliver lumber or pick up the logs, or better lumber storage area, or anything else that makes the entire operation more efficient. So before you spend money on a bigger mill, ask yourself, what's actually slowing me down? And fix that problem. Now, before we get to mistake number two, I want to remind you guys of my hat giveaway in my previous video. I will try to embed the video right here somewhere. If you don't see it up here, check in the first comments. So go in that video, look for instructions on how to enter into a giveaway. At the end of this week, on Sunday, which would be August 30th, which is Sunday, by midnight. Okay, Sunday by midnight, and on Monday hopefully I will either have a video for you guys with the winner, or I will go live and announce the winner of my giveaway. All right, so now let's get back to mistakes. Mistake number two is cutting lumber without knowing what you're going to do with it. So right now behind me you see I have I think it's a 13-foot log, but I need 12 foot. And I have an issue that I need to solve, and I need some lumber. I want some 4x4s and 2x4s, so that's what I'm going to use this for. But this one is really easy to do. You get a nice log like this, you put it on the mill, and you start cutting boards. And when you're finished, you've got a beautiful pile of lumber, and then you look at that pile and think, now what am I going to do with all this lumber? You got to have a plan. I've been there. I put logs on it and just start cutting without a plan. There's nothing wrong with cutting lumber for yourself and figure out a project later. Usually with me, if I have some logs that I need to get rid of, I will either do 1x material or like a 2x4s or 2x6s. You will always use that on a farm or on projects for yourself. But if you're trying to sell lumber like me, you really need to understand what your customers want. You know, what species are they looking for? What thickness? How wide? Do they want green lumber? Do they want dry lumber? Do they want, you know, random width? You know, they say, you figure it out. Or do they want specific dimensions? Or do they want slabs? Or do they want beams? What's the difference between a post and a beam? Post goes up and down, beam goes across. You need to know what people are actually willing to pay for, because board footage isn't necessarily the same thing as value. You can have 1,000 board feet sitting around. If nobody wants it, it's useless. You can cut a log and maximize the number of board feet you get out of it, but if you end up with a bunch of narrow boards that nobody wants, like I said, you can have 1,000 board feet, you did not necessarily win. Sometimes a wider board is worth considerably more to the right customer. So don't just ask, how much lumber can I get out of this log? You got to ask, what valuable lumber can I get out of this log? Not just what lumber. You have to get out valuable lumber. That is a completely different question. I'm going to cut this log into, like I said, 2x material, and I still have my carbide blade on here, so I'm going to use that. Mistake number 3 is milling logs that are not worth your time. Here's something else I've learned. Just because you have a log, it does not mean you need to mill it. This one right here is pretty low quality, and I'm not doing this for money. This is for me. So that's one thing you have to determine if you want to sell it. Is it worth your time and effort? Okay. I've had plenty of logs where technically I could put them on the mill and get some lumber out of it, but that does not necessarily mean I should. There are some back and forth on that, because some of the worst looking logs create the most beautiful grain. Okay, again, doesn't mean I should. I have a minimum diameter that I'm comfortable working with. So if somebody wants to bring me logs, my diameter is 9 inches. I don't want to accept, and definitely don't want to pay for anything less than 9 inches. For me, like I said, it's around 9 inches, so that way I can get a clean 6x6 out of it. Your number may be different. You may not have trees, your average tree may only be 6 inches. So figure that out for yourself. And that's okay. It's, again, your time, but you need to know that. The point, what I'm trying to make is, you need to figure out what is your cutoff and how small of a log diameter you are willing to cut. Because think about everything's involved. You've got, to load the log, you have to move the log, set it on the mill, cut it, handle the lumber, stack it, sticker it, dry it, store it, and eventually you have to sell it. So if you spend an hour processing a small, crooked, low-quality log, ended up with a relatively small amount of lumber, was it really good use of your time? Was it worth it? Maybe, maybe not. You have to figure that out. And that's something, like I said, you need to figure out for your operation. For me, if I'm milling it for myself, sure, it might be worth it because I can make a video out of it. And the question you have to ask is this log worth cutting? Not, can I cut this log? You can cut any log, but is it worth cutting? There is a big difference. Mistake number 4 is underpricing your lumber. This is the one that I think catches a lot of new sawmill owners. You make a sale. You get $500 for a load of lumber. And you think, great, I just made $500. Well, maybe. You need to figure out what it actually costs you to produce that lumber. Did you pay for the log? How much fuel did you use? How many blades did you go through? You might have hit the metal. How much time did you spend sawing? That is one thing I'm really bad at, is watching how long it takes me to saw something. And then, how much time did you spend handling the lumber? What about your tractor? You got hours on your tractor, your mill, your maintenance, storage, drying, delivery. Are you delivering this lumber? And there's one that people always forget. That is your time. Again, I am really bad about this, and I know your time is valuable, and I don't really consider that, but I am very small, and I have to figure that out on my own, and you have to do that as well. If you spend 8 hours producing and delivering $500 worth of lumber, that's not the same thing as putting $500 in your pocket for doing nothing. And that's why I think it's important to stop thinking about the price of the lumber and start thinking about the cost of producing lumber. Big difference. There's one thing to know what the lumber cost, and it's another thing to know how much it costs you to produce that lumber. Just because you can sell a lot of lumber and still not make a lot of money. Does that make sense? If you don't know how much it costs you, you can charge whatever you want to and you can sell a lot, but are you actually making money? And this is what I'm talking about. You see this 2x4 that I just cut? Look how bowed it is. Look at all that tension. This is not something that you want to sell to a customer, because the customer will not come back. But I am going to cut this in probably 4, maybe 6 foot sections, so it should work for me. But again, don't sell this stuff to a customer. All right, let's go ahead and finish this up. But this is the hat that you are going to win, or hopefully enter to win. Again, watch my previous video. I will have it embedded in this video or pin it to my first comment. Mistake number 5 is not tracking your time and the real costs. This kind of goes along with the previous number, but I think it's important enough to make its own point. If you're serious about making money with a sawmill, start writing things down. I am horrible about this. I don't write anything down. I wing it. But start writing things down. It doesn't have to be complicated. Write down, what you pay for the log, how much lumber you got out of it, how long it took you to mill it, how much fuel you used on that log or even on a job, how many blades you've used, how long you spent stacking it, how long it took you to deliver it, and write down what you actually sold it for. Do this for a while and you're going to learn some things about your business. You might find out that a particular species of wood is really profitable. You might discover that certain sizes sell quicker. You might find that another type of lumber sits around for 6 months. Or you might discover that you're spending way too much time processing certain logs, and that's good information to have. Because now you can make better decisions. You may decide that custom sawing is better for you than keeping larger inventory. That's what I do. I don't keep inventory unless I have some offcuts and I try to sell that or use it myself. Or you may decide you want to specialize in beams. I don't like cutting posts and beams because of my manual mill, and hardwoods is super heavy, super hard to handle. Or maybe slabs. I do some of the slabs. Or dimensional lumber. Or maybe you realize that the best money isn't selling lumber at all. You may not even make any money selling lumber. Maybe you want to use firewood or sell it for firewood. I don't know. You need to figure that out. Maybe it's sawing for other people. You don't know until you start tracking. So start tracking your jobs and see what sells. And the last mistake, mistake number 6, is not planning for drying and storage. This goes back to my previous videos, a couple videos back, talking about 5 things that you need. You need space. What happens when the lumber comes off the mill? Because this is something you need to think about before you start sawing. Where are you going to put it? How are you going to sticker it? How are you going to stack it? How are you going to keep it dry? Again, this is if you keep inventory, obviously. How are you going to protect it from the weather? In the wintertime, snow gets on it. How are you going to protect it from the sun and anything else? Because you can cut a beautiful log and produce some really nice lumber and then ruin it, just ruin it during the drying and storing process by twisting, cupping, not having enough weight or strapping it down. You need a level place to stack it. You need good stickers. You need consistent support, airflow, and depending on what you're doing, you need to think about how you're going to dry it. Eventually, I want to add a kiln so I can dry lumber and add that to my sales instead of just custom cutting and green lumber. But you need to figure that out. Do you want to do that? And don't wait until you've got 5,000 board feet sitting around to figure this out, okay? Figure it out first. I've seen people focus so much on buying a sawmill that they forget they're going to have to deal with all that lumber afterwards, and not just lumber. I mean, I've got a stack of slabs that I have to do something with, sawdust. I mean, you've got to figure all that out. The sawmill is only the beginning of the process. You've got logs, you've got sawing, stacking, drying, storage, selling. Every one of those steps matters when it comes to lumber. And here is a bonus, the biggest lesson. So you asked me, if I can go back and give myself one piece of advice before buying my first sawmill, it would be this. Don't build your business around the sawmill. Build it around the customer, okay? Figure out what people want, figure out what they're willing to pay, figure out what it costs you to produce it, figure out how much time it takes. And then buy the equipment you actually need to do the job efficiently. Because it's easy to get caught up in the sawmill itself, it's easy to think that a bigger mill, more horsepower, and more production automatically means more money. But that's not necessarily true. More board feet does not always mean more profit. A bigger mill doesn't always mean a better business. And making a sale does not necessarily mean you made money. So if you're thinking about getting into sawmilling, take your time. Start small if you need to. Learn what your customers want. Track your numbers. This is the biggest one. Track your numbers. And figure out what actually makes money before you start spending a bunch of time and money making it. I've made plenty of mistakes along the way. I still make mistakes every single day I come out here. Hopefully you can avoid a few mistakes that I've made. If you found this information helpful, let me know in the comments what mistakes you've made with your sawmill or what you wish you would have known before you bought one. And again, guys, thanks for subscribing. Subscribe if you like this video or if you found this helpful. And if you're thinking about buying a sawmill, subscribe to this channel because I've got plenty more to share about what I've learned along the way. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.